The village in it with a map and a plan. No place too tiny for this determined man. Crossing the counties one by one, he'll see in every English corner a bit of history.
Welcome back to Warwick again for round 4, people, your Thursday episode this week. Now, I'm beginning this one at the end of a long road, which basically is a dead end. You can't go any further than there. Not if you're in a vehicle anyway. I don't think you can really go much further if you're walking, to be honest with you. I don't think there's a public right of way down there. Now, even so, I have managed to turn this one into kind of a circular route, but there's not really a lot here. It's a very tiny one, the smallest one we've seen so far here in Warwick. Welcome to Wasperton. Wasperton, pear orchard on alluvium. Alright people, it's time for number 4 in the Warwick series, and today we've come to the smallest one so far in the district. This is the tiny Wasperton, located just off the A429 south of Barford and very close to the border with Stratford-on-Avon. Wasperton lies on the eastern bank of the River Avon and was at one time an important place for the extraction of gravel, much like several villages we're already familiar with along the Trent. That industry is long gone, but the very fact it was here led to a remarkable set of discoveries, painting a picture of Warwickshire from centuries ago. Gravel digging activity revealed a cemetery which contained both Roman and Anglo-Saxon graves. In total, there were over 200 inhumations and 26 cremation burials uncovered. 116 of the inhumations and 24 of the cremations were determined to be Anglo-Saxon. The graves included spears, shields, knives, brooches and beads. In some ways, the discovery wasn't all that surprising. It's known that in pagan times, Wasperton was an area densely populated by such people, and when the church was built at nearby Barford, such communities dwindled away as Christian teachings became more prominent. We'll be talking at length here about the Woman of Wasperton though, a project devised to capture the essence of how life once was out here. Wasperton soon had a church of its own, today one of very few landmarks in a village on a dead-end road. We start with a drive down the A429 from Barford, and I've got to be honest here folks, this first bit wasn't all that exciting. It's a standard road really, with not much of interest on it. I had though seen a lay-by on the left when planning today's route, and on the map it hinted there was a food van that trades from it. If there is, it wasn't here on this particular day, so this ended up being a whole lot of nothing. No matter, I was able to spin around and make for the village pretty easily, so no harm done. Why I thought this was anything worthy of note, I'll never know. We start at the far end of the dead-end road on which Wasperton lies. It is, in essence, just this one twisty, windy lane which runs between the A429 and the eastern bank of the River Avon. It never actually reaches the river though, even though the Avon is visible in places. It's mostly housing, and it's a varied mix. Some are massive, some are small, some are modern, and others very old. It's one of those places which can't really be pigeonholed into any kind of category. I guess that makes it attractive in a way. Don't be thinking that this lane is quiet though, despite the fact that this is a dead end. Even though I was only here for the small matter of just half an hour, I shared this road with several vehicles, including cars, vans and even tractors. Wasperton is not the quiet, out-of-the-way village it would seem to be on the map. This is St John the Baptist Church, which was built in the 18th century. It's not the first that Wasperton has had to its name. Originally, the village contained a chapel belonging to the much larger church at Hampton Lucy, further along the River Avon. That chapel would become the parish church in 1535. However, by 1736, it had been largely rebuilt, made as it is of red sandstone and plain tiled roofs. On top of that, the building you see today has been renovated and altered again. It's mainly the work of Sir George Gilbert Scott, who reimagined it all in 1843. The church has a few notable bits, including an octagonal lead-clad timber bell turret with a short spire. There are 2 bells within it. One is by Henry Bagley, dating from 1638, whilst the other is dated 1817. Inside, there's a screen dating from 1845, and the east window was made to the designs of Augustus Pugin. Its communion rails are late 17th or early 18th century. The pulpit is modern, but it incorporates 6 early 18th century carved panels of foreign workmanship. They include the baptism, the temptation of Adam and Eve, the sacrifice of Isaac, and a figure of charity with a woman and child. There's quite a bit of power in that sun at the moment, people. It's quite warm, even though it is early October. Trust me, I'm sweating buckets here. Anyway, we've now dealt with the church and everything that's at the western end of Wasperton, and now we're on a public footpath, and what this does is it goes through the churchyard and goes back towards the main road, which we've already seen. When we get there, we're going to reach a farm where we're going to talk a bit about J&A growers, and then we're going to head back down the main street to where we began. The only other thing really that's in the village is the village hall / institute. Not quite sure which it is, but we'll find out when we get there. And that's really all there is to Wasperton, to be honest with you. There's not a lot here, but let's go and find what there is. So from here, it's a case of following the footpath, really. You can't go wrong once you get through the trees behind the churchyard, because it basically runs around the edge of a field before meeting the A429 at a farmyard. That farmyard is what we're going to talk about next. Gravel extraction alongside the River Avon used to be one of the main industrial practices in Wasperton, and it was so for years. These days, that's not the case, and local employment is a little more sparse. Despite that, the village does have J&A growers. Based at the farmyard on the A429, they are the UK's leading grower of quality bare root trees and hedging. The company, which only sells directly to wholesalers, delivers live trees to its clients across the UK. Its main competition aren't British. Instead, they're similar growers based in Belgium and the Netherlands. Working closely with J&A are Exact Logistics, who recently chalked up a significant milestone for the company, the astounding figure of 60 million trees delivered across the UK since their partnership. So from the churchyard to this point, it's less than a 10-minute walk. You're not going to break sweat just ambling between the two along that footpath. And it's a good footpath as well. It's not boggy, it's not muddy, it's pretty simple to follow, definitely not overgrown either. Really, really good. Okay, so now we're going to take a left turn and walk down this road for a short way and then back into Wasperton village. There's not much more to see, people. Now we're heading back to the church, and between the A429 and that point, this is literally all housing, except for one building that's worth a mention in a moment. Until we get to that though, there ain't much to talk about, so here's a little collection of shots for you to be going on with. This is the parish hall, but originally it was a school. In 1843, Reverend Thomas Leveson had a school built in Wasperton, presumably because he felt there was a need for one. It didn't last too long though, likely due to low attendance. Since 1923, the building has been used as the parish hall instead. It's made of an attractive red brick, which fits in nicely with the rest of the village, and has the date 1843 inscribed over the door. It's also got the parish notice board on the wall, so it's card time. Tick off Wasperton, folks. It should be noted, by the way, that children here attend the school in Barford these days. That school caters for both villages, as well as Sherborne too. Okay, so we're almost back to the bend where the church is. We've almost completed the circuit. I told you there was hardly anything here. I'll tell you one thing though, I have seen a lot of people drive up and down this road, and a lot of people walk up and down this road as well. So there's clearly a very tight-knit community here. People going about doing their daily business, you know, people gardening, people moving wheelbarrows up and down. That's the kind of thing I've seen. And out here, I suppose that's the way of life. And it's been the way of life out here for quite a few centuries, in fact. I found something very interesting online called the Woman of Wasperton, and this is what it was all about. During the height of gravel digging activities in Wasperton, an astounding discovery was made under the ground. A Saxon cemetery containing some 241 inhumations. It was surrounded by a Roman crop mark complex, but also situated closely alongside prehistoric earthworks, including at least one Neolithic long barrow and hengiform complex. Broadly, burials within the cemetery appear to have begun in the 4th century. Meticulous excavation, stratigraphy, and carbon dating from the cemetery allowed archaeologists to establish a chronology for the burials. Several different funerary practices were intermingled, possibly suggesting the use of multi-generational family plots. For sure, this was an intense area of activity, farming, and settlement throughout several centuries, and that fact inspired the Woman of Wasperton project. The project aimed to reconstruct the costume, at burial, of one specific woman who lived in the mid to late 6th century, found buried at Wasperton in the cemetery. Known to the archaeologists as Inhumation 24, the woman was situated in the southwestern corner, an area containing a highly diverse set of burials. There were limited skeletal remains, but from the examination of the bones and teeth, it was determined the individual was an adult. There were a selection of grave goods, particularly an elaborate brooch. This suggests her status was pretty important, or that her wealth was far greater than was typical of others buried in the same cemetery. A pair of gilded cast copper alloy saucer brooches with iron pins were found too, presumably having been worn on each shoulder. Trailing down from these were an array of 63 amber beads. Such items aren't uncommon in the Avon Valley because amber could be sourced locally, but it occurred in such abundance in these graves that it's much more likely it came from the Baltic. In turn, that demonstrated the once immense power of Wasperton's Saxon trading connections. The most eye-catching item from the burial, though, singled out as one of the cemetery's star finds, was a large gold-plated cast copper alloy great square-headed brooch. It was 15 centimeters long and ornamented with Sailing-style animal art. These only occur in a minority of furnished women's graves, usually found in positions suggesting they were worn centrally on the chest. Great square-headed brooches also occur in Scandinavia and have a widespread distribution across lowland Britain, particularly Norfolk, Cambridgeshire and Lincolnshire. But we're in Warwickshire, so finding one here was incredible. But get this, no fewer than 4 burials at Wasperton contained these great square-headed brooches, with the example from Inhumation 24 being uncommonly large. These finds helped to recreate the costume this woman would have worn. Work began in spring 2020 using full-scale models of the brooches. The amber necklace was precisely replicated using nuggets of Baltic amber, although it's impossible to know its original colours as it degrades over time. The woman's dress was constructed from a wide rectangle of fine, white diamond twill linen, traces of which were found on the back of the brooches. Linen remains from early Anglo-Saxon burials almost never yield dye traces, and this was no exception. Her linen was likely a natural greyish-brown colour, although it could be bleached to produce a range of pale colours up to and including white by heating with a dilute alkali such as wood ash and then exposing it to the sun. In the grubby environment of early medieval settlements, bright white garments would have been at the very least eye-catching as any colourfully dyed clothing, and the effort required to keep such garments clean would have meant their appearance likely served as a strong advertisement of social status. That would certainly tie in with this woman's apparent show of wealth. When thrown together, this impression might appear quite unlike any other images of early Anglo-Saxon dress historians are used to seeing. Such dress styles were extremely archaic by the 6th century, but let's not forget this woman lived in a community with an apparently unbroken continuity from the Roman to the early medieval period. Nonetheless, the Woman of Wasperton project was, and is, highly speculative. The images presented here represent the appearance of just one individual who died and was buried a little over 1500 years ago. Knowing exactly how the average woman lived in the Avon Valley centuries ago is a mystery we may never fully solve. And it's not beyond the realms of possibility that more graves could be found here, if a brand new sand and gravel quarry gets the go-ahead. Smiths Concrete have submitted an application to extract sand and gravel from the 220-acre Wasperton Farm site next to the A429 over the next 15 years. Coming out in support of the residents who vehemently oppose such a move is none other than Dame Judy Dench. Dame Judy has many links to the area. Indeed, both her mother and her late husband, Michael Williams, are buried in the churchyard at Charlecote, just down the road. Dame Judy features in a short film about the quarry, saying, "As someone who spent many very happy years in this part of the country, it distresses me terribly to think that this landscape, which I know and love so much, may be destroyed. I hope it doesn't happen." That was a truly fascinating insight into the lives of our predecessors, wasn't it? Reading through the Woman of Wasperton project was eye-opening. The full details of it all can be accessed via the link below. Time to move on though, up the Avon Valley to the next one. Thanks for joining me here, and I'll see you for more in Warwick tomorrow. Now, just before I go, remember, this video is part of a huge project to visit every civil parish in England. That's more than 10,000. These routes are pre-planned, and due to time constraints, I can't cover every detail or walk down every street. Please don't complain if this video missed something out. I pronounce names how I choose to. I am very aware that local dialect may vary, and I don't take kindly to criticism about this. You've been warned. It's impossible to know everything too. If this video was terrible, make your own. If you're a regular watcher of The Village Idiot, you're not the only one. If you've got a small business, why not use my videos to advertise it? Leave a comment below if you're interested. And finally, thanks for watching this episode, everybody. Give us a like and a subscribe if you've enjoyed this episode, and share it with your friends and relatives. It all helps to keep this mission going. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as The Village Idiot, and I'm out.